can. Nope, that makes.
There we go. I'll look at the camera.
Okay, for real this time. We'll get started. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. This is the Alberta Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors meeting for September 25th, 2024. I'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting. We are conducting our meeting today on the territories of the Coopetchessit and the Shot First Nations, and we recognize, affirm, and support that fact. With that in mind, though, we do have a meeting that is in a hybrid format, which means we have folks here today in the boardroom as well as people online. So what we'll do is we'll do introductions around the room first, including staff, and then we'll go online, and then I'll just call out folks' first names, and then you can introduce yourselves. With that in mind as well, we do have a question period at the end of the meeting. However, we don't monitor the YouTube chat, nor do we always monitor the Zoom chat. So the most reliable way to get a hold of us is by replying to an email during the meeting, which is responses@acrd.bc.ca, responses@acrd.bc.ca, and that would be the best way to go about doing that. With that in mind, we do have an agenda in front of us, but before we get to that, we'll go and do our introductions. So if we can start with Heather and go around the table, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
Debbie Haggard, City Appointed Representative to the ACRD Board and Vice Chair.
Good afternoon, Klama Penny Cote, Sprout Lake Electoral Area Director. Welcome.
Good afternoon, I'm Mike Sprout, Electoral Area Director at Cherry Creek.
Good afternoon, Mariah Coots, Director for the Hushakosuk Tribe Government. Clayoquot.
Good afternoon too, I'm Jack McClellan, Alternate Director for Beaufort.
Good afternoon, I'm Daniel Sayan, the CAO for the ACRD.
Good afternoon, Alex Dyer, Planning Manager.
Good afternoon, Cynthia Dick, General Manager of Administrative Services.
Okay, and we'll start online. Susan, do you want to kick us off?
Good afternoon, Susan Roth, Beaver Creek Director. Thank you.
And Bob.
Good afternoon, Bob Beckett, the Director for Area A, Banfield.
And Vida.
Veda Sigurd, Director for Area C, Long Beach.
Vida. Tom, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Tom Steer, Appointed Director, District of Tofino.
Shari.
Shari Minions, Mayor for the City of Port Alberni.
Kristen.
Afternoon, Kirsten Johnson for Toquat Nation.
And Lavana.
Good afternoon, Lavana Mastrangelo from Ucluelet First Nation and currently in Campbell River, Hamalco territory.
Yes. And Heather's already here. Paulo.
Good afternoon, Paulo Eichelberger, Solid Waste Manager. Good to see everybody.
Thanks, Shane, and then Eddie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Shane Corin, Manager of Financial Services with the ACRD.
Go ahead, Eddie, if you're there.
All right, miss that. Good afternoon, everybody. Eddie Kunderman, Operations Manager for the ACRD.
Oh, we should have had you in the photo. All right. And I am John Jack. I am the chair for the regional district and the representative for the Wait First Nations. So with that, we can kick off. I believe we do have an agenda in front of us today. I don't believe that there are any extra materials, nor are there any extra items. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add, or we can move the agenda as presented? Thank you, Director Cote, seconded by. Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comment? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. Alrighty, so that brings us to declarations. Does anyone have any conflicts of interest, apparent conflicts of interest, or gifts exceeding $250 of value? Usually it comes about for the planning matters, but I think we're okay. Okay. With that, that brings us into the adoption of minutes. So the first of which is 4A, the Board of Directors meeting minutes for September 11th, 2024. You would like to move the minutes? Thank you, Director Cote. Seconded by Director Coots. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Item B is a bit different here. We do have an amended piece of minutes here because we did miss one of the emails that had sent in, or maybe the only email that was sent in for the committee of the whole meeting, September 11th, 2024. Could you read it out, Heather?
Yeah, thank you. So this email was received on September 11th, and it's from Larry and Maria Ransom. Good day. Thank you for taking our questions. This is related to the incorporation presentation that was done at the COW meeting. Thank you for taking our questions. What are the potential tax implications of incorporation? What impact will incorporation have on various infrastructure upgrades, and how will they be paid for? Example, will the water system be extended to and upgraded for all lake residences? Will fire hydrants be included in the water system upgrades? Will the water come from Sprout Lake or from the city of Port Alberni? And what costing options would be available? Will Wi-Fi services and options be improved for all areas of Sprout and Great Central Lakes? And that was it. Thank you.
Okay, so I believe the answer to that question would have been that we will find out in the reports that will come through as a result. So I'd like to thank the Ransoms for the question. That will be added into the minutes as a question. So if we could have a motion to accept the minutes as amended. Thank you, Director Cote, seconded by Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. I'd just like to welcome Mayor Marilyn McEwen from UT. Good to see you. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm late. I came from another meeting.
You're a mayor. It's understandable. All right. The last item for the minutes is the Agricultural Development Committee meetings from September 17th, 2024. Would anyone like to move the meeting minutes for the Ag Dev Committee? Thank you, Dr. Siga, seconded by Dr. Steer. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Awesome. That brings us to petitions, delegations, and presentations. Normally, our petitions and delegations and presentations are limited to 10 minutes maximum or thereabouts. If you're close to the end, we'll let you keep going. But if it looks like you're not near the end of a presentation by the time we hit 10 minutes, I'll hit pause and ask the directors if we can continue. The answer is almost always invariably yes. So with that in mind, we'll get into the petitions and delegations. First off is item 5A. I'd like to welcome Mr. Chris Hall, President of the Riders of the Alberta Valley, to present on McQuinnett Trail, I think. Great. So thank you and welcome. And please start at your convenience.
Hi, thanks for having me today. I'm not as high tech as some of the other people around here, so I have this cool poster that if I hold up properly, where's the camera? You can see sort of what we're doing. What I'm actually here for today is to, I guess, give you an update on what we are doing with your letter of recommendation to take control of the trails above the McQuinnett Trail. And it's been a much longer process than I was hoping for, but apparently it sounds like it's coming to the end right now. We put in if you're familiar with it, Section 54 with the provincial government to be able to manage that land and maintain and build trails for multi-purpose use. And you provided us a letter of support saying, yes, I don't know, I guess we support that idea. Some of the things that we have been doing, well, we had to get insurance, which was a big one. Jump through all the hoops of meetings like you guys are doing. But for now, we have finished making it a legal non-for-profit organization. We have riders insurance, we have directors insurance, we have third-party liability insurance. We're working on application grants, sourcing sponsors. We have our merchandise, sweatshirts, and there's a t-shirt underneath. Just getting our name out there so people are aware of what we're doing. We have over 100 members already, and according to the public, you know, we haven't done anything yet. So that seems like a pretty good number for little old Port Alberni. Memberships are $40 a pop, and we're using it to fund things like insurance. And we will get into trail maintenance once we can work with the trails up there. We have a trail building school in the works that will come in and teach us how to build trails up to the Whistler standard, which is sort of the world-class standard of trails. I guess from there, what we're working on after we get the McQuinna trails is dealing with Mosaic at the candy store, where sort of the well-known old school mountain bike trails are. And there'll be more mountain bike specific, but we are aware of hikers using it a lot more now since COVID. So we will be looking at very clear signage for both the trail networks and mapping with the goal of being able to promote the regional district in the city. Because one of the weird things is we have all these beautiful trails and we can't promote them because they're on private land. So once we get once we get to be able to manage the McQuinna Trail Network, the city, the ACRD, will be able to hold races on it and promote it district wide, or, you know, province wide, worldwide. I mean, I guess the main goal, or the real goal, is to become something like Cumberland, like a world-class destination. And long term, hopefully we get there. We've talked about once we get the candy store from Mosaic, pairing with the ACRD and the candy store itself, and working with the hole in the wall. Having that maybe be the first sign as tourists see is coming down the hump, as opposed to the lawyers and whatever other signs are just past the candy store there. So that's the goal. Questions?
Okay, thank you. Dr. Haggard, please go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for the really good work that you're doing in our community and doing this work for the people so they can get outside more and do more adventure riding. So that's great. Fantastic. Just a couple suggestions. You might want to work with Alberni Valley Tourism because they can help promote your trails. That's part of what they do, and they do have money and they do videos to promote the community, and also work with the Chamber of Commerce as well and help promote you that way. So congratulations.
Yeah, we need to have trails to be able to promote first. So that's been one of the biggest issues, besides figuring out who owns what land. But yeah, once we get control of the trails, it'll be great because everybody will be able to promote it. And yeah, that kind of stuff is in the works, the Chamber of Commerce and all that stuff. Yeah. Thanks.
Director Sparrow, go ahead.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah,
Cherry Creek representative, but also I go in the area behind the candy store quite a bit and up on those trails, and there's quite a few extensive bike trails up there, which are fun. And I'm always wondering what happens when I meet a bike coming down. I used to take my dog up there and there's some blind corner thing. If I hear a bike coming down, I gotta get off this trail quick because he can't see me and the braking's not that good in some of them. And one trail I went down, I guess it's under construction. They had some flagging and all of a sudden the flagging stopped. I was in the middle of nowhere going nowhere, but it's all fun and game. Didn't hurt myself, so that's all good. But I like what you're doing and hopefully we can get more people interested and see how the logging up there is doing right now and how that's going to impact what you're trying to do because they are pushing roads up there, right? Up, what's it called? Come over the creek. The Cold Creek, there's a trail beside it that they kind of breached through to do their logging. They're also putting another road up further up, aren't they? So it's interesting how it's gonna happen, but.
It is, yeah. One of the things with shared trail networks is going to have to be really good signage. Because some of the trails do have to be dedicated downhill trails because some people, not me, but some crazy cyclists go really, really fast down there. And like you said, there are some blind corners. One of the things that we are discussing is building like sort of hiking up trails as well. For the people who like to hike around there. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Cote, and then Dr. McClellan.
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you for this. A couple questions. So it sounds like this is identified trails by a club. Is your structure like a club? When you have a $40 membership, is that a membership to a club? And I'm wondering, how are you identifying these trails? I know that there's a number of trails out at Sproat Lake, and we also have the Bike Skills Park at Cougar Smith Park. So it's very well used. And yeah, they do flips and all kinds of amazing stunts there. We also have trail system around the lake. On Lakeshore and on Favor. And I'm just wondering if what you're looking at getting from the regional district. Are you looking at incorporating all of those trail systems into one, and is that part of what your group, club, or whatever it is, your membership covers? Thank you.
It is a club. It's a not-for-profit, and we have all that sorted out. Officially, none of the trails right now exist because they're all on private lands. So that's why we're starting with the McQuinna Trail Network because that was dealing with the province, and we were told from other clubs that that would be the easiest one to start with. Get control of that, sort of prove ourselves, and then expand from there. We are in talks as well with the Sproat Lake. I've forgotten their name. It's not a bike group. It's one of the Sproat Lake transportation. I can't remember what it is exactly. Sorry. But we are in talks with them because they're actually one of the big pushes of getting all the groups together that use Mosaic's land and trying to get together as one unified voice. And we have talked to them about their active transportation that they're looking at. And yeah, we're aware of the trails out there, but again, none of them are official. So hopefully one day we'll have all the trails under our umbrella and be able to maintain them up to the world-class Whistler standard, to take out the liability. Because that's one of the big concerns, especially with Mosaic, is liability. Are these trails going to be built well? And like I said, it's a world-class standard, so there's nothing higher than the Whistler standard, which we will bring in an instructor, a teacher to help us with building and maintaining the McQuinna network once we get control of it.
So I had a question. Oh, sorry, Dr. Siga, you go first.
Thank you. I just kind of want to clarify because it sounds like your group is specifically for downhill biking, and it sounds to me like the trails out at Sprout Lake are more cross-country and perhaps even like BMX type of, like there's different kinds of biking. So can you just sort of tell us specifically your biking niche?
It is a mountain bike society or club. So it covers all genres of mountain biking. But we've also been dabbling in gravel riding too, which is logging roads. So I guess anything other than commuting, because there's already a group in town that deals with commuting on the streets. Cycling under any umbrella is what we would be tackling. We are actually looking at putting on a group ride for gravel around Sprout Lake at the end of October, hoping that the weather holds for us. So yeah, any and all cycling, except I guess for commuting on the streets.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, Director McCormick, please go next.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, so my understanding and what I've just first heard about this today. So you have no trails that you are in control of right now. Am I correct?
That's right.
So how do you propose to get control of the trails like this McQuina Trail system? Is that on Mosaic property or is that on Regional District property?
That is on provincial crown land. And we have an application that really sounds like it's near the end of the approval process. So and I know I've been known to be an eternal optimist before, but I'm really thinking this is close to the approval at this point.
Okay, and you were talking about this thing they call the hole in the wall. Yeah, that's between the city, I guess, and Mosaic owning it. Have you got any cooperation from anybody to do something with that?
Not so much cooperation to do anything with it, is more just having like an outdoor recreation hub in that area. Of working together with, I thought it was ACRD. That's been part of the problem, is figuring out who owns what. The city or the ACRD, who's ever in charge of the hole in the wall, working with them to build, there's been talk of a safe way of getting across the highway from the parking lot, expanding the parking lot above the paved part of the candy store that looks like it used to be a road. And just having that as an outdoor recreation hub, as all these people pass through Port Alberni to get to Tofino, maybe we can get a whole bunch of them to stop, is sort of.
Oh, they do already. They stop, they're driving down the road and they see, they're watching their phone, not the road, and they turn left. And get into one of the parking spots for the hole in the wall, and fortunately, nobody's been killed yet. They're working on it though.
That's what I hear, yeah, and I think it would be great to have mountain biking and multi-use trails on the other side of the highway, on the safe side of the highway, I guess. And then have it as, a tourist destination hub, or at least a stopover on the way to Tofino.
Well, when you get it figured out, and let us know. It's a lot of people have tried.
Yeah. Well, again, well, I mean, I guess we're getting close to a year old now, but we're still brand new with trying to get things going. Because as I'm sure you guys know, the red tape takes some time, and that's what we're working with.
Okay, Director Sparrow, go ahead.
All right, I'll try and put some clarity in what he's talking about. That paved road up past the candy store in the bushes is the old highway coming in town from about 40 years ago. That's why it kind of turns the way it does. The hole in the wall is owned by the city. Around it's owned by Mosaic, and I'm the representative in the ACRD for that area. So if that clarifies anything, that's
no,
where
it
you're
really
at.
doesn't, but thanks.
That's where you're at. So the city has property in there, Mosaic has property in there, and I'm the rep dealing on top of that. So welcome aboard. We'll see what we can do, but.
Yeah,
figure out
yeah,
in the
well,
whole
yeah.
area, so.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, awesome. Yeah, I mean, it'd be great to work with whoever up there. Yeah, thanks.
Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. Just one more trail area at Sprout Lake is trails that in the community forest. So those are also hiking, biking trails. Yeah, that have been developed, and there's all kinds of ladders and strange, biking.
Okay, yeah,
jumps and whatnot that
the
are out
community
there.
forest, I've heard about. We've talked a little bit about it. One of the beautiful things that I think will make Port Alberni a cycling destination is everything's right in town. McQuinna Trail's right in town, the candy store is right in town. And one of the issues that I see with the community forest is it's a little farther away for people in town, but that is on the radar for possibly way down the line. We're also, I mean, way down the line looking at the Beauforts, just sort of taking the candy store and extending it down to McLean Mill, because it would be amazing to have events and things down at McLean Mill too. So many possibilities, and yeah, so little time so far. But we'll get there. We're planning on being around for years and years, so we're going to get there.
Before we get to Director Coots, I think it would be great if you were able to return at some point in the future with a map, just to take a look at it. Director Coots, and then I'll have final comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, through the chair. Thinking in longer term thoughts, if you guys are very successful in what you're hoping for, will you be considering any forms of like a shuttle kind of vehicle for young ones who might want to come and participate and come and do the big hike up the mountain with you guys, but parents might be working, they may not have their own transportation, but they know they have a bike? Thank you.
That's something we haven't talked about yet. And just off the top of my head, I'm thinking insurance might be a nightmare, but we're open to any and everything, definitely. And yeah, I like that. I'll bring it up at the next meeting we have and see what people think. But yeah, that would for sure be down the line. Yeah, we are looking at right at the top of Bird Street. There is somebody in there who has built a trail. I don't know, might not have heard of it. He's titled it Port Alberni. If you know cycling, the berms, you're going around corners and they build it up like the what am I thinking? NASCAR, those bank corners. So that's his clever twist on that. And it's a short trail. It's got jumps, and it seems to be, from what I've seen of it, very progressive. You can ride it on, you know, a department store bike right up to the $10,000 mountain bike, because you can avoid all the jumps, or you can take the medium-sized ones, the baby ones, or the giant ones. And there's talk of him putting in a climbing trail. So it's a short trail that you should be able to do laps of without a shuttle. But yeah, the idea of, you know, if we get control of the candy store, having a shuttle could be, who knows? Thanks.
So the only thought I'd leave with you is maybe interacting with some of the Indigenous communities as well. Sushant Hupechessit might have some ideas around investing in trails in the same way. I would also say talk to Huu-ay-aht. Also, Dr. Beckett might know a bit more about this, but the community forest that we have between Bamfield and Huu-ay-aht, a lot of trails have been built in there. So you may want to interact with various community forest entities. I guess Director Haggard would be the one to talk to about that, and go from there, because there are always opportunities out beyond Crown. Untangling all of that kind of who owns what and who has access to what is probably the way you want to figure out what you don't want to get into, and then see where you can start first. But I'm really happy to hear that you've gotten going, and on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation, and maybe, you know, 6 months from now, you can come back with an update.
Yeah, sounds great. I guess on that note, we are looking at working with the First Nations. one of the things we're looking at right now is to bring in a movie made by First Nations youth. And I'm not in charge of that one, so I'm not exactly clear on it. But it's about trail building and getting First Nations youth into mountain biking. So we have somebody on that, talking to some of the nations. And that trail at the top of Bird Street is sort of a little secret deal between this guy who is building it. And I believe it's a Hupeshet up there who has the tree farm license in that area. So we will eventually we will eventually talk to them to see if they're willing to work to build a nice trail network up there too. So like sort of expand from the McQuinna Trail Network basically all the way down the valley, really is the long-term goal. So yeah, thank you very much. I'll work on a map. Well, I'll get the map person to work on a map because I don't do that. Yeah, you can see how high tech I am. And I can send this to anybody. It's just what we've done, what we're working on, and what's coming up next, and the long-term goals in the future.
We'll have someone from staff connect with you to get it onto our meeting minutes, and then it's always somewhere we can find it.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, they'll have to walk me through it though.
On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
Okay. All right, well, next up, item 5B, I'd like to welcome Mr. Alex Glassy, the president of the Alberni Valley Restorative Justice Society, to give us a presentation. And he's come prepared, so we'll let him get everything ready. And I must say, I really like your Zoom camera off image. It's quite good. Great. Oh, there we go. Perfect. So you may need to use the, oh no, you're wireless. You're all good. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Welcome. Please take it away.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for having me here today. And Chris, you gonna hang around? My name is Alex Glassy. I'm the president of the Alberni Valley Restorative Justice Society. And I want to talk to you today about a little bit about what restorative justice is, how it can support a varied community like the Alberni Valley. I want to talk to you about what we've been up to over the last year in particular and why that's important. And then finally, I'd like to ask for your financial support to contribute to our base financing over the next 5 years. 58 years ago, I was a 4-year-old boy and living in a rural area of Scotland, outside of a small village. And one summer's day, I was out in the back lane and throwing pebbles and rocks as little boys do. And thought it'd be fun to throw some rocks at a window of one of our neighbors' sheds. And when the window broke, as we knew it was going to, I panicked and ran home to my mom. And it didn't take her long to get the full story from me. I make a lousy criminal. She took me by the hand and walked me next door to the neighbor whose shed window I'd broken, and knocked on the door. And the neighbor came out, an elderly woman who was a retired nurse. And to my 4-year-old eyes, she was about 10 feet tall, and I was just frightened out of my wits. With a little bit of coaching, I explained what I had done. I begged for forgiveness. I apologized profusely, and they gave me a dustbin and a pan, and I went into the shed and cleaned up the broken glass that was left. And I'm sure my mom then paid for the window, because I didn't have any funds as a 4-year-old. And then my mom took me by my hand and we walked home. That story, as simple as it is, has stayed with me for the last 58 years, and it has impacted my behavior at several points in my life. And as simple as that story is, it helps to illustrate all the key aspects of what restorative justice is. Restorative justice takes place when there has been some harm done, and it invites people to come together to talk about that harm. Somebody takes, in my case, me, takes the responsibility for the harm, and then the group itself works together to figure out what that reparation might be, sweeping up the glass and paying for the window. And yet, despite its apparent simplicity, it actually can be applied in a huge number of situations. And this is where it's This is where its power comes from. Those situations can actually be measured. And this is a survey from last year, or some research from last year. And it says restorative justice has the potential to yield a substantial social benefit cost ratio of $14 per $1 invested, and a direct return on investment to the criminal justice system of $4 for every $1 invested. So let's take a look at how that return is created. So when we think of crime, for example, we often think of these participants. There's the person who did the crime, responsible person, and then there are the organizations that make up the criminal justice system, the RCMP, all the way through to corrections. And what restorative justice does is it broadens that perspective and gives other people an opportunity to fully participate. So in particular, my mother, who was related to the responsible person, that was me, who was feeling upset and embarrassed and maybe a little fearful for how her son was going to turn out. The affected person, of course, the nurse, had full opportunity to air her views and how this had affected her, and maybe the friends and the family of that particular nurse. But as we broaden into more complicated and more serious cases of crime, in this particular case, sometimes in a community, some of those people know both the person who has done the harm and the person who has been harmed. And what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to bring those communities together. That's what restorative justice does. As we step back even further, what we see is that restorative justice wants to consider the entire community. And so I'm just going to go around the wheel here. We have the criminal justice system that we've already talked about. We have the social support organizations, and you can see them there from CMHA all the way through to PASS and Island Health and others. Every single one, by the way, every single one of these organizations, we have an active relationship with. From the schools, there are 4 schools outside of the city. There are 8 schools inside of the city. We have been doing work to do early work, preparing, teaching how to do circles in classrooms to create a different behavioral perspective in the classroom. So that's before anything's happened, and then after something's happened, particularly when there's a potential of a suspension involved, like a removal of a student from the local society, which is the classroom in the school. We help to make sure that that suspension doesn't happen, and we do things in a different way. The same thing if there are teachers that are facing some kind of disciplinary behavior that might result in some kind of suspension. As of yesterday, we just signed an MOU with the teachers union to make sure that if there are situations like that, we can get involved. And then, of course, First Nations, the 14 First Nations here, we have active communication and discussions going on with 3 or 4 of them. This, after all, restorative justice, after all, came from First Nations in Canada and then New Zealand and some countries in Africa. And the discussions are very much us listening to try to understand the historical and the cultural approaches that the nations themselves take. And there's differences between each one. And then how we can blend something so that it really works better for the particular cases that we're working on. Restorative justice tries to interrupt the cycle of criminal justice. So before someone gets caught up in that large wheel, or at any point where they're coming out, the federal crown can refer to us, provincial crown, the court itself can refer to us. Judge Wolf is a great friend of ours. And corrections, we've just got a referral from corrections, helping someone try to integrate back with the family and the community that they've done some harm with. And we also work with, we've all seen this headline of yesterday. We also are active members of the community action team, and we're helping to interrupt the cycle of opioid addictions. Restorative justice can play a very active role in that as well. We believe that we absolutely have to work as a community to be able to do the best that we can to support our community. And here on this slide are a lot of ways that show us how restorative justice can financially impact and benefit the Alberni Valley. And I'm not going to go through them all, But you can, we've already talked about some of those things. And I think you have a copy of this deck. You'll be able to see that. But right inside, these are local numbers from either our region or our province, and they support the slide that I showed you earlier, that 4-to-1 and 14-to-1 socioeconomic benefits. Here's some more research. Just a summary. RGA appears to be more efficient, cost less, result in lower levels of recidivism. So breaking that criminal justice cycle, and higher levels of satisfaction among all participants, in particular the victims, who show material benefits a year later when they're included in a restorative justice process. There are 18 support letters here, starting from the federal prosecutors who love what we're doing. They're really trying to make a move right across BC. There's Tloquit, and I'll just keep going. Again, all these are in the deck, which you can see. Sage Haven, you'll recognize a lot of these logos and names. There's a couple of people who have been through our process. Some of the other RJ groups. RJ Victoria, by the way, does hundreds of cases a year, and cases that are very simple, 4-year-old boy breaking a window, all the way up to multiple drug cases. And so everything you can imagine, they're involved with it. And that takes an enormous burden off the other members of the criminal justice community. And then finally, Judge Wolf's given us his blessing as well. So we're a small but dedicated group. We've revamped ourselves over the course of the last year. We're professionals. We have teachers, lawyers, social workers. Michael Ramsey from Salvation Army is on our board. The RCMP are on our board as well. We're currently looking to hire a coordinator, which is something that we've only been able to do from recent funding. And we're hoping in the next 6 months to hire an executive director. And of course, we have groups of volunteers that are needed to work with the cases. Again, don't want to go through all these numbers, but if you look at the blue line, our strategic goal 2 years ago, coming out of COVID, we needed to renew our vision and renew our board. Do we really want to do this? And if so, how? Over this year, we've been growing awareness and growing capacity, and that's been largely in part because we received some funding, civil forfeiture grant, and Alberni Valley Community Foundation gave us a grant as well. Looking into 2025, we are looking to increase all kinds of things, and that's why we're looking to you for help, and to the city for help, and others for help as well. Let me keep going. I'm almost done. So finally, you're all warmly invited to call me anytime or talk to me right now. Become a volunteer if you're interested in doing this work. Attend or join our monthly board meetings, and attend our AGM on December 5th. All of you will receive a personal invitation to that AGM. We hope you show up, and we ask that you invest, because it is an investment, in restorative justice in our region by contributing $75,000 per annum for 5 years to support our base funding goal. And I note that, my apologies, and I note that $75,000 is about 1.5% of the region's annual surplus. It's 0.3, it's 0.3% of the revenues, but it's 1.5% of the surplus. And we also have a comparative there. There's the Comox region is supporting over 5 years their restorative justice group. And when we look at the population adjustment, the $75,000 is on par with that. I really appreciate your patience and your time. And if there are any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Do we have any comments or questions? Dr. Haggard and then Director Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nice to see you again, Alex. It's always nice to get updated on what's happening in the community. Just so everyone knows, I've heard great things about this organization and the great work that they're doing, the difference they're making in people's lives. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy life to donate and volunteer your time to do this good work.
Thank you, Director Haggard.
Thank you. I have Director Roth and then Director Stew.
Thank you, Alex, for your presentation. I'm wondering, have you made any applications or funding requests from the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General? Because they're quite definitely in that field, and it would sort of go along with what they do. And the provincial purse is much larger than ours.
Thank you for the question. No, we haven't done that yet. There is a provincial organization, the Restorative Justice Association of British Columbia, and we leave that to their bailiwick. That said, we are actively looking for all kinds of funding sources, and so I'll take that as a note, and I will pursue them directly. Just as a side note, while we're on to the provincial group, the work that we've been doing here over the last 9 months, just this calendar year, has caught the eye of the provincial association, and they've asked me to speak about the work that we're doing in Port Alberni and the Alberni Valley, because the work that we're doing really is leading the way, even amongst much larger places. So I think we're probably right behind Comox Valley, and then City of Vancouver, which is becoming a restorative city, one of the 10 restorative cities in the world. And I would love that we have Restorative Alberni join that group. Thank you for the question.
One more thing to expand on that. Where I work, we have a program called Community-Based Victim Services, and that's where we get our funding. So I know it's possible. So keep at her. Thank you.
Thanks for the encouragement. I hope we're not competing for
No.
Thank you for that. Next up, I have Dr. Steer and then Dr. Cote.
Yeah, and thank you very much for the presentation, Alex. It's clear that the restorative justice model is a tried and proven commodity in our communities, and I really thank you for bringing it forward to the board. And Director Roth, she nailed a couple of the points that I was going to bring up in terms of potential funding sources through the Minister of Solicitor General and Public Safety, and mentioned a couple of others. I think that's an excellent avenue to start pursuing, because as she pointed out, our limited availability of funds in these areas. And my question is, in terms of it is Alberni restorative, but I do know that there is some work out here on the West Coast, and I think you did mention Tloquet First Nation as a letter of support. Possible to expand on some of the work that happens out of the West Coast for our communities out here?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So one of the things we're doing with Tloquet is, well, first of all, we found I think it was a $750,000 grant from the Law Foundation, and we worked with Tloquet to apply for that particular grant. It was unfortunately unsuccessful, but that's the type of work that we're doing. We've got another one of those processes going on right now between the city and it's a shot. I think for a $1 million grant that wouldn't just be for us. We would for a number of people looking at Indigenous victims of crime. With regard to the work we're doing with Tloquet right now, it's really it's a listening tour. We're spending time with Tloquet elders and community members to understand their traditional approaches to Indigenous justice and cultural, historical. And so we've got several of our members that are very interested in doing that. And we're then folding that back into the work that we do. When we get a case referred to us, and this is the beautiful part about restorative justice, is that when we get referred a case, it becomes to the criminal justice system and to all outsiders a black box. And it allows us to do really whatever we want to do. And so we can get very creative. If we have a Indigenous citizen, for example, that has been referred to us, we can then, with their permission, reach out to their nation and see if and how they want to get involved. And I know nations have very different ways of doing things, and that is fantastic. It allows us to then, for example, if a nation has a land-based program, we can start to incorporate that into the process. And whatever we do in that black box is then will satisfy the referral that we get from the Crown or RCMP or Corrections or whoever. So I think, does that help to answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for the explanation of the like you say, having the ability to open up a wide range of tools in that toolbox to be able to address the individual situations, whether First Nations communities or potentially the other communities on the West Coast as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, I have Dr. Cote. Is there anybody else? All right, I'll have something after. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you for this presentation. It's very interesting hearing about restorative justice. I have a few questions. I'm pretty sure I had friends years ago that were involved as volunteers. And I think it was through the, the Catholic Church. They were involved with the church anyways, and I'm just making that assumption. But they talked about some of the work that they did and how wonderful it was. They did work with youth, so I'm wondering if you work with youth doing this, and I think you've answered the question about victim services. And a few years back, I took a forum at UVic. It was called CUVIC, where they discussed different First Nation services, or they talked about health, they talked about law, which was bringing back this thoughts about restorative justice. And I think that they had very similar practice that they were describing with the laws that they were identifying as First Nations practices. And that's what it was trying to provide that information to students that were going to UVic and to participants that were at this forum from local governments, etc. So I'm just wondering if there's any connection there with First Nation law through that, and if you're working with youth, and if you're associated with that group that I remember that I thought was associated with the church. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Coots. Yeah, so do we work with youth? Absolutely. And in fact, we work with youth, as I said, in the schools before any bad stuff happens. We run circles, or we teach teachers in particularly the high schools to how to do circles in their classroom. I'd be delighted to talk more about that at some future time with you. We also then work, as I mentioned, once a student runs afoul of or it has some bad behavior in school, the school is limited in terms of the approaches. It's like, we can do this, and then we have to suspend you. And it's that suspension from school that statistically causes that student to become less likely to graduate. So anywhere in your school career, if you've been suspended, you will be less likely, I mean, statistically, not massively, but statistically less likely to graduate. There's shame and embarrassment when you are suspended, either as a teacher or as a student. And so what we're trying to do is, again, interrupt that cycle of shame and embarrassment, and bring that person along with the people that they've harmed as a teaching moment to help them understand why they might have done that, like I learned when I was 4 years old. With regard to the Catholic Church, we have no direct relationship with the Catholic Church at all. I have heard of some of this stuff, but I've only been with this organization for a year. This organization does go back till 2001. So I imagine there may be something that's going on there. With regard to, pardon me, with regard to the work that's going on at UVic, we get we see that stuff through our very strong relationship with RJ Victoria and through the Provincial Association, and also through some of our own work. We've got a couple of researchers here that are doing actually leading work, globally leading work in trying to understand how to measure the impact of restorative justice in schools, for example. I'll also say that with regard to Indigenous law, there are two court cases that are, I think, underutilized. And this is one of the missions that I'm on, is when I'm communicating with anyone in the criminal justice system, is that there's a Gladue case, which everyone here should know about. And that is the courts saying that, or the Supreme Court saying that courts should take into effect alternative measures of justice wherever possible, in particular for Indigenous citizens. And this was reinforced then by another case, IPEELEE, and which basically said that courts shall take alternative approaches, including restorative justice, into consideration as they have people going through the court system. This is not well known. And so we have people going into the court system that don't know that they can stick up their hand and say, hey, you know what? I want this. We have defense counsel that don't know that they should be asking for this. We have, again, the RCMP. This is not well known. And so this is something that we think everyone should know, and we think we take it upon ourselves to let people know that there are alternatives. Not only are there alternatives, and that's, we have to have an alternative in this city and in the valley. That's why we're here. But that because now, if there is an alternative, now the court is able to push back and say, hey, have you considered these options, which are probably going to be better for the person in front of me, but also going to be better for the people harmed and the community as a whole. Sorry, it's a little bit of a long-winded answer. I hope that was useful. Thank you.
You mentioned some great resources and some interesting court cases to take a look at. I've participated in a restorative justice circle in Port Renfrew, actually. One of the trail guardians went through that process with Parks Canada on behalf of SBC's at risk. And so having participated in those, I do believe in the value in what you're doing, especially when it comes to relieving the pressure on the court systems as they appear. It's interesting to hear what you said about just now. Do defense lawyers, do prosecutors know that at a certain point after a plea, they should be talking about these kind of options as well? But that being said, have you interfaced at all with any of the so you've interacted with Tla'opia. Have you spoken to the NTC president, Judy, or Les Dorn, the vice president? They might be able to get you in front of the NTC, the New Charles Tribal Council, and they may be able to have and access resources that could help in helping you find an executive director and a coordinator and actually going through this, especially in the interactions with Gladue and other places. We do have an interest in that. There are treaty nations involved as well. So you're speaking to 3 of them. And so wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, all 4 are here. Yeah, sorry. I didn't count myself. And with that in mind, I think there are some real opportunities to link up and create a network of resources as well. Because a lot of nations don't have the capacity. So maybe you can trade your capacity for some of us applying and getting grants and sharing in that as well. So I think that's quite a strategy. And the more that we can do to address a lot of what's going on out there, I think the better off all our communities will be. Because especially in the Alberni Valley is like a cultural center for literally all of New Charles, short of those who go to Campbell River. So this is something where we all have an interest in what's going on here. So I'd like to thank you for your presentation, and I'll let Deb have last word. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I just thought of something. I know Alex has gotten a lot of suggestions today, and I've given him a couple suggestions to pop on as well. And I know that he will do that. But just in case nothing pans out, Heather, can you tell me the applications come out for our grant and aid?
Yeah, I can. We're just revamping our grant and aid process right now, but we anticipate that applications will be due in April of each year. So I can reach out to you with that information.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to add a couple things before I sign off. The first thing is that we can take a referral certainly well before the plea. So we can take the referral, the RCMP rolls up on someone, we can take their referral. They can then prepare their file, send it over to the Crown. Before Crown does anything with it, they can send us the file and so on and so forth, including post plea as well. I'd also be, I'm very grateful to hear you name some people with regard to the NTC and others, and I'd be grateful for any introductions. We think this is a critical place, and we are absolutely focused on bringing this thing to life in the Valley. We are also, while I'm on a public record here, we're also looking for more board members, and in particular, if there are First Nations people who are willing to sit on our board, that would be we'd be really grateful for that as well. With all that said, thank you very much for the time here, and I look forward to talking to you all again.
On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation, and we'd love to get an update as time goes by. See you in April at the very least. Okay. Well, folks, that concludes item 5 in our agenda. We don't have an item 6. There's no correspondence for action. For correspondence for information, we have 2 items. Would anyone like to pull anything out? Dr. Haggard, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pull out the media release from the Neutral North Tribal Council on the state of emergency declared on the present opioid crisis. I'm not sure what the proper protocol would be, if you could write them a letter of support or do a press release supporting them. I just wanted to recognize that we are in support, but I'm just not sure what the most appropriate thing that the board could do.
I think now that we've gotten the information, we know what they're asking for with the state of emergency and the emergency board resolution that was sent forward. So if it's a point of comfort for everybody on the board, we could send a letter of support to all of the interested bodies that we need to speak to on supporting what they're asking for. So they're not asking for money for no reason. In fact, the NTC chiefs want to see resources for the creation of plans, and not just for toxic drugs and opioids, but for mental health and for kind of holistic prevention of those things. And I think that's probably ultimately the best way to do it, because that whole prevention to outcome ratio just saves money every which way, money and time. So I think that's within our power to send a letter. In terms of a press release, we could do the same as well if you'd like, but I think a letter of support at the very least would be great. So I'll turn that back to you. Yeah. Would you like to move a motion to that effect?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we write a letter of support for the Neutral North Tribal Council and write to any respective agencies that we feel may be deemed appropriate, and do a press release as well.
All right, thank you. Seconded by Director Steer. Does anyone have any comments? Seeing none, I would probably like to have both mine and Deb's signature, since I am a part of the group that passed the resolution. So let's just keep that on the up and up there. Any further comments? And then after this, we'll do receiving the reports. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. We have a motion to receive the reports, please. Thank you, Dr. Coots, seconded by Dr. Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor to receive the reports? You need to hold the baby up to vote. Hold on, I'm sorry. There you go. All right, thank you. Oh, there we go. Just like that Italian European Parliament lady. She brought her baby to the European Parliament for like 4 years. It was pretty cool. All right, with that, we will move on to the next item. We're getting into section 8. So section 8A is a request for decision regarding the Vice project. I'll just call it that. Please go ahead, Paula.
Thank you, Chair. Hello again, everybody. So before you have a report recommending a letter of support for Synergy Foundation's Vice project, which is pretty appropriate. Synergy Foundation, as you can see from the report, it's a nonprofit. They've been set up for over a decade now, and they've been working on, most recently, a circular hub strategy to provide opportunity and sustainability for companies focused around business. And where we're seeing forestry impacted companies, obviously, we're looking at they are looking at an opportunity to link up with ourselves, the ACRD, Cowichan Valley Regional District, and Quothet Regional District. The key pieces that they look for are the grant that they're applying for will lead into a program that will allow them to engage with various partners, challenges, and look at accelerator programs, so circular assessments to businesses, almost like a waste audit for business, but looking at the materials that can be utilized and repurposed. They are promoting training through promoting circular economy practices, again, best practices, and they'd be conducting policy reviews with various businesses and stakeholders. The result of all of that would come into a business plan for groups of business groups that would detail what the infrastructure needs would be, locations, partners, etc., to set up hubs, essentially. And those hubs would provide that opportunity for companies, organizations to connect and repurpose materials, primarily construction demolition materials that are either unused as a result of a project or something that can result from a deconstruction project as well. And really feeds into some of the work that we were doing with the solid waste management plan, looking at construction demolition waste. So you have the letter before you in the write-up, so I'll just open it up for questions.
Thank you. Dr. Steer, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Paulo. I was just going to make the motion unless there was other people that I can't see that had questions for Paulo. It is a well supported. It aligns very nicely with our strategic plan, specifically as Paulo mentioned around the solid waste management plan that we're working on as we speak.
Please go ahead, Dr. Steer.
Yeah, I'll move that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors provide a letter of support to the Synergy Foundation's VI Coast Ecosystem Project.
Seconded by Director Coots. Any further comments? Director McClellan, please go ahead.
Yeah, this looks quite interesting, but it looks to me, unless someone's got other information on it, that this is mostly a think tank, bringing people together to talk about problems and coming up with ideas, but I don't see where they're actually doing anything, and I'm wondering about spending money on it until we get more information.
I think that's something that we can cover off as time moves forward. I think we're just providing a letter of support for them to get some resources to do the work. So hopefully that's okay. Go ahead.
Well, we're looking for staff time at the start, just an hour or two a month. But then, of course, if we get this committee, then it's going to be quite a bit more. And will we need more staff, or what will they need from us? I think it's probably something we should be cautious on.
Yeah, well taken. Next up is Dr. Roth and then Dr. Cote.
I'm just wondering, it kind of reminded me of Community Futures. It seemed a little bit similar. I don't really know a lot about Community Futures, but maybe maybe someone does. Thanks.
Thanks. Does anyone want to weigh in? Director Haggard?
I worked for Community Futures for 17 years, and Community Futures is an organization. And it provides consulting and services and lending services for small businesses. So it's not similar at all.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Next up is Dr. Cote, I believe. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I think this aligns quite nicely with the Climate Action, Vancouver Island Climate Action Group. This would be something that they would definitely be supporting with the circular economy. I think it's a great strategy worth looking at, and possibly will help us with our trying to reduce things to the landfill and solid waste plan. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item B, still with Paulo. So this is regarding the tipping fee bylaw amendment. Please go ahead, Paulo.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. So the West Coast Committee met a few weeks back to discuss the new project that actually the existing project as a great successful output of our organics facility, and that's called Sort and Grow. So we have worked together with both our landfill staff, Ocean Legacy, and our internal team to come up with a concept of what the Sort and Grow product would look like. And so we've obviously got a lot of Class A compost ready to go. We've got approximately 310 tons of material that have come through, mixed in with yard waste, and they've created a nice grade A compost that has been set up, ready for receiving and ready for sale as of today. So the key takeaways from this is the costs in question are $20 per Sort and Grow bucket with the first fill free. In the bylaw, it's also listed as $5 per 20-liter pail if you're bringing your own pail to get your compost, or $50 per yard, which is within reason of the compost rates of today. We have brought on board a series of a couple hundred buckets to start things off and see how things go for initially selling off the material and promoting the Sort and Grow concept. And the key piece out of the story back again is the nice full circle portion of this is between our project coordinator coming up with the concept for sort and grow, and landfill staff and Ocean Legacy looking at our rope and netting and coming up with an option of actually using the rope and netting that shows up at the West Coast landfill, processing it and turning it into the buckets that you see. Which, as an aside, there may be about a dozen buckets or so at the front of the boardroom there, which will provide for the directors in the room at the end of this, and we'll do a quick photo for everybody. That's what I've got. I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Paulo. I had a couple quick questions before we get to Dr. Steer. What is the definition of Class A compost? Is that like aerated and everything?
Correct. That comes right out of the BC organic matter recycling regulation. They have a Class A, Class B. We focus on Class A, which is the sellable material that goes out for doing your greenscaping, gardens, and whatnot. That's what that material is for. And the release for today, as an aside, is recognizing that it's in the fall. It's the great time actually to pick up compost if you're going and laying down your garden beds for the winter to allow that breakdown of soil and save yourself some growing time in the spring. But that's what that is.
Thank you. And thank you for being patient, Director Steer. Please go ahead.
No, I was just going to, I was going to thank staff for the incredible work once again on this project, making those connections. And yes, Joe, with the sort and grow, 2 thumbs up. If there was no other questions, I'm willing to make the motion at this point.
Please go ahead.
The Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors give first reading to bylaw R1033-7 amendment, West Coast landfill tipping fee and regulation bylaw.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Siga. Any further comment? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Okay, motion carried. You can just
move
say
move second reading.
Thank you. Seconded by Dr. Sparrow. Any further comment? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Move third reading.
Thank you. And seconded by Dr. Coots. Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried.
And finally, I'll move adoption.
Great. And do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Siga. Any further comments? Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. There's a poster here, and I'm just wondering if the picture is, if that's what the compost actually looks like. Thanks.
Go ahead, Paula.
Thank you, Director. Yeah, the compost is actually, it looks much darker than that. This is a stock footage that we had in the background that we could utilize to illustrate what it feels like and looks like. It's a darker, loamy compost that you'll see when you pop open the bucket. Very similar to what you may see in stores. So yeah.
Enjoy the word loamy. I also enjoy the fact that it's sort and grow. Like whoever came up with that was just perfect. That was great. Any further comments? Oh, please go ahead, Paul.
Sorry, just tagging on that. That's sort and grow. That's credit where credit's due. That's our own Jody Frank.
Oh, awesome. And with that, all those in favor? All opposed? And motion carried. All right, thank you. All right. Oh, and thank you. That brings us to item C. So this is for Shane. It's the formal lease application for the for Long Beach Airport. Please go ahead, Shane.
Awesome. Thank you. So before you is a formal lease application for lease lot LS-L 2024-010 at the Long Beach Airport, which is with a numbered company. The proposed term would be effective November 1st, 2024 to July 1st, 2064. So the rate for this lot is as set by our current market rates, and it is also going to be subject to future BC CPI increases as well as market rate assessments. I do want to note the proposed lease lot is noted as 1,254 square meters in the RFD. This may be subject to a small increase as we are in the process of getting a formal survey done, as it is going to be potentially be a long-term lease. This application was approved at the February 28th, 2024 West Coast Committee meeting, and it has also received support from the Toloquia First Nation. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good, thank you. Dr. Steer, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Shane. A couple of quick questions, and thank you once again for the work on this. Is really well done. I had a, and it's a kind of a geek question. I'm not sure. In the report, it talks about that there's a registration of the lease by the applicant, and I was unfamiliar with who that would be registered with, and what is the purpose of registering that lease?
Oh, sorry, Tom.
No, it's okay, and then I'll have a follow-up question.
Perfect. So through the chair. So the purpose of registering it is it actually gives the leaseholder a little bit more ownership rights. So that is registered with land titles. The reason we go through that process on most of our long-term leases is it does allow them to enter into financial options such as mortgages and gives them the opportunity to better control that land as they do have a vested interest over a longer period of time.
Great, thank you, Shane. I appreciate that. And just and then this is more a comment. I just really wanted to thank staff and the work they did with Tloquet First Nation in terms of the 3% of that lease rate to be transferred to the Tloquet First Nations in recognition of that agreement that the MOU and the recognition of the lands that we are conducting business on up there. So thank you very much for that work.
Okay, with that in mind, are there any other comments? Director Sparrow, please go ahead. I was going to say Mike. I'm like, no, I can't do that. Go ahead.
Thank you for that. So I'm reading this right. I mean, it says from July 1st, 2064 at market rate plus applicable taxes and yearly BCI CPI increases. Is that going to compound them both, or do you just want the, you know what I'm saying? It's saying market rate plus yearly CPI increases.
Great. So through the chair. So all of our leases are subject to annual BC CPI increases. This ensures that they're maintaining, the rates are being maintained with the inflation that we're seeing in our province. The market rate assessment process, we conduct that about every 5 years, or if there is a major market change. So the reason we do that is we want to ensure that obviously all of our leases are paying fair and market rates for those properties. So 2 different processes. One is in perpetuity throughout that lease, and one is more of a update once every 5 years.
Daniel, go ahead.
I'm just going to add to that it's not uncommon to include the framework under which rates will be reviewed for long-term leases. It just helps those lessees understand what variability they might face over in this case, a 40-year term. And it's nice to have some structure that it's not simply a motion, which I won't say is whimsical, but could be whimsical depending on the information coming in. And so knowing that there's going to be specific structure around that, then the motions of the board are going to be in line with that structure. And so helps reduce risk and produce certainty.
Go ahead, Dr. Sparrow.
Yeah, and I agree with all that. But the way it words almost like it's going to compound the two. I don't want to compound it and seem unreasonable, but at the same time being reasonable.
No, they complement, they don't compound. I mean, it is, well, if I'm understanding correctly. So let's theoretically, if we're looking at a 2% CPI a year, then yes, that would compound. So your 2% is on the last year's 2%. The market rate, though, is your benchmark. And so once you establish your benchmark, the CPI is what compounds on top of that benchmark. And a 5-year check-in renewal or a market rate review. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Steer?
Yeah, I can make the motion that the ACRD Board of Directors approve entering into a long-term lease agreement with registered company 1454235 BC Limited for lease lot LSL2 024010 at Long Beach Airport effective November 1, 2024 to July 1, 2064 at market rate plus applicable taxes and yearly BC CPI increases.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. McEwen. Any further comments? You seeing none? All those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Okay, that brings us to item D, BC Transit 3-year expansion initiatives. Andy, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for that. So here we have the RFD for the BC Transit 3-year expansion initiatives that comes every year for West Coast Transit and the Alberni Valley Custom Transit System. There are no recommended expansions for the custom transit system. The board did approve 2 last year that will take effect in January. So those were 1,300 annual hours for weekday service, and then the introduction of a base level of Saturday service. For the West Coast Transit System, BC Transit is in the process of taking over and transitioning to take over and run that system, which was welcome news. The ACRD service that was introduced in April was introduced as somewhat of a base level interim service as we waited for that BC Transit provincial funding. And that came with 5,700 annual service hours. When BC Transit takes over in March 1st will be the date, 2025, they will be implementing 7,500 annual service hours. So we'll see an 1,800 hour increase right there with that implementation. Schedules are being finalized as we speak, and staff are working with BC Transit to work on the conversion. But we will see improvements right away. So the improvements will be in the service span. We'll have later buses, which was one thing that we have heard from the public. It would be nice to be able to take a bus home later in the night from Tofino to Ucluelet or vice versa. There'll be an increased number of round trips. We'll have a stop within the Millstream community added. And then we'll have a couple extra stops within Ucluelet. I know there's one already being targeted between Bay and Hemlock, which will be welcomed. And then we are working with the Ministry of Transportation to also identify any potential areas between Millstream and the junction where we could add a stop safely. So we're looking at all those items. Now we're moving to 7,500 hours. This expansion is looking for an additional, and I just lost the amount there. Sorry, additional 1,300 hours. This expansion is, so that would take place as of January. So there are a couple potential items that we want to flag with that being such a short turnaround between BC Transit taking over the service and having an hour increase there, and then introducing another 1,300 hours. One of the items and one of the concerns is around the labor issues that we have been seeing with the transit system. It has been the primary issue that has caused a reduced level of service. I think our level of service reliability in September was about 67%. So that is, we were delivering 67% of scheduled trips. Now, for a reference, typically, if you're looking at a larger transit system, you're looking at 98% service reliability as a target you want to hit. So we are well under that. Being a smaller system, though, you have a smaller sample size. So if you miss a trip, of course, it's going to affect that percentage a little bit more. We are working with the operating company and working on an amendment to address some of that service reliability and include some performance measures in there. So we're working to address that, and we are confident that in the next little bit, with the drivers they've already hired, that will improve. But that is a concern because we're already going from 7,500 and then to go in 9 months up again, 1,800, it could be a labor concern. So that is an item that we flag. Financially, so when we look at the financial side of BC Transit coming on board and with the 7,500 annual hours, we're looking at an estimated net municipal share of about $520,000. Now that is an estimate because BC Transit is still finalizing the contract extension with the operator. So we don't have an exact number there, but they have communicated that number presented last year. It should still be relevant. For reference, when we were looking at kind of what the municipal share would be for the ACRD-led service at the reduced level of service, we're at $670,000 in operating costs. So we will see a slight reduction there. Those numbers don't include staff time, but when we look at what the expansion will cost, it will be an additional annual cost of approximately $78,000. That's the municipal share. So that's working off the shared services funding model with BC Transit, which for a conventional transit system is the municipal share is 53.31% and the provincial share is 46.69%. That contrasts to what a custom transit system would be, is where the municipality pays 33% and the province pays 67%. Given this information and given the time frame, staff did include an option because of potentially delaying this expansion till year 2 of the 3-year initiative, just to ensure that to get larger sample size of data, of course, to ensure the annual hour increase is necessary, and then to ensure that from a labor standpoint, we can actually meet the demands of the 7,500 hours before jumping up. It does say in the report there that if the board of directors approves this expansion, that the ACRD is tied to moving forward with it. That was my initial communication I received from BC Transit, but when I followed up on that, it was actually communicated that because there are no buses tied to this expansion, that we could approve it, and then if we were looking at budget time deciding not to, we would be able to back out of it. So that was really tied into the buses. So that's the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Steer, please go ahead.
Yeah, and I just want to first start off by really thanking Eddie and his team. The challenges over this summer were not they were quite extensive, let's just say, and I know the tremendous amount of work that his team and himself put into that effort over the summer. And I really wanted to thank him once again to coming out yesterday and giving a great explanation to the West Coast Transit Advisory Group on the coast. It was well received with lots of really good questions. And so I did have one question, and we talked about this earlier. We had a presentation from Seth Wright from BC Transit, and it was regarding the conventional cost share and the custom cost share for services. And I posed the question around if we could be looking at that model for the cost share to make it a little more equitable from the municipalities or from their regional districts contribution. And if that was legislated with the province, Eddie did give a good explanation, but I think it would be valuable for the board to hear that. And I might make a request, and I think Eddie is going to follow up on it in terms of speaking to the province and BC Transit to see if there is any negotiable conversation specifically around that conventional and custom service and some of the I thought some of the challenges in providing that service in the rural areas, specifically on the West Coast here. So thanks, Eddie.
Yeah, and for the chair, thank you for your question there, Director Steer. And yeah, it was a good conversation yesterday. So referencing the shared services model and whether or not there is room to negotiate on that, it was my understanding from when I worked at BC Transit, and I worked very heavily in the custom transit systems and in this kind of realm, that these agreements and the model was agreed upon between BC Transit, the province. It was set. So really the only way to kind of negotiate that is to really move from a fixed route service to an actual custom transit service. Custom transit has such a higher it's a higher cost of delivering the service, of course, because your cost per ride is exponentially greater than that of a conventional service. So I think it's somewhere we could have discussions with BC Transit and look at, are there opportunities to implement a flex service in there in certain aspects, and does that kind of open us up to that discussion? But I will definitely follow up on that with Transit.
Thank you. I have Directors Cote and then Director Steer.
Thank you. Through the chair to Eddie, I'm just looking at this budget, and this is just for the West Coast Transit budget. Is there a new piece that you could add in a report coming forward to include the increased service for the Alberni Valley Custom Transit? That we haven't gotten into that for the expanded service at this time, I don't believe. I'd like to know what the cost of that is, and if it's affecting my area at all. So I'd like to make sure that we're getting that extended service so that Sprout Lake residents are actually using it. Just following up. Thank you.
For the record, Eddie was nodding.
Yeah. Through the chair, and sorry, yeah. So the custom transit expansion has not yet taken effect. It will be implemented in January. It was delayed from April to January due to procuring buses. So we had to get some buses in and order buses and whatnot. I can provide you those numbers for the custom expansion and the costs relating to that. They were included in. They will be included in the financial plan, and I will get you those numbers as soon as we have them.
Okay, I have Dr. Steer and then Dr. McClellan.
Right, I was going to make the motion that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors confirm the BC Transit three-year expansion initiatives 2025 through 2026 through to 2027-28 and delegate authority of the CAO to sign the Memorandum of Understanding letter with BC Transit dated August 29th, 2024.
Thank you. Seconded by Dr. Johnson. Well, basically everyone on the West Coast. Okay, thank you. We'll go right to Dr. McClellan, please.
Yeah, I thought I understood it pretty good, but Director Cody asked the question or made a comment that this is only on the budget for the West Coast. Is that what's true?
Eddie, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, this is the numbers provided there. That is just relating to the West Coast Transit System, because there were no proposed expansions for the next year for the custom transit system.
Okay, I'd request a recorded vote, please.
Okay. So this is going to be a recorded vote for the West Coast Transit System with the budget and no budget for the Alberni Valley. Okay, so with that, all those in favor? Yeah, I'll start online. Dr. Siga, Dr. McEwen, Dr. Steer, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Beckett, Dr. Minions. Are you voting, Dr. Mastrangelo? Yeah, okay. Voting to the yes or the no, and you're muted. Yes, okay. Okay, and in the room, we have Dr. Coots, Dr. Sparrow, Dr. Cote, Dr. Haggard, Director McClellan, and me. And Dr. Roth, do you want to speak or are you voting?
I just wanted some clarification. I'm not.
The vote, so I have to.
Okay.
Vote,
so I'm just going to abstain for now because I didn't get it. I missed it.
Okay, thank you. All right. All those opposed? I think that's everyone, so I don't think. Okay, and then normally speaking, I don't think we have abstentions, but we'll make note that you said that, Dr. Roth. Okay, so the motion carries. Dr. Roth, you wanted clarification. Did you still want to say it? You're unmuted though, so you can still talk.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just wanted, is it as written? Was the motion as written?
Yeah, I believe he just read it out.
Okay, and it was just the West Coast.
Yes, that is
okay.
Correct.
Well, I would have been in favor of it if I understood that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, and this is recorded, so like
okay.
So people will be able to see that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any further comments? All right, thank you. That brings us to item E, which is the grant funding application with the UBCM. Shane, welcome back and please go ahead.
Awesome, thank you. So through the chair, before you is a grant funding application through UBCM to assist in the development of a long-term financial plan. So this plan aims to support the long-term planning of capital infrastructure maintenance and replacement schedules. If successful, this grant will provide up to $25,000 towards the development of that plan, in which staff would like to engage a consultant to access their expertise to review draft documents and work through challenges as the plan moves forward. To the best of our knowledge currently, no other regional districts have a great solidified long-term financial plan. And this is why staff would be looking to a consultant to work through some of those processes. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Cote?
Thank you. showing my ignorance here because I thought that that's what our asset plan, management plan was all about, was looking at our assets and creating a plan for that. So looking at my fire department, we have a long-term plan for trucks and building. And so I'm just wondering what this is for. Thank you.
Daniel, did you want to jump in?
Yeah. So as we develop our asset management plan, what we started with is our asset inventory, taking stock of the current condition of the assets we have. And we do understand the maintenance schedules and whatnot that occur on most of these assets. What we don't have is a model for how it is that we financially plan for the 10 years and beyond in terms of some of these assets tied to specific services. So where most municipal asset management models are going to be help with the long-term planning, they tie back to a single silo. With a regional district, each service is its own silo. So for us, we're in the neighborhood of 60 silos. And each one of those is structured where there's different voting parties to that silo. And so what we don't have is a good benchmark on how it is that we can, in a unified way, build a long-term financial plan tied to those assets. So you're correct. We've been building the asset management model. What we're still missing is that long-term asset management planning, financial planning tool. And where it gets confusing is, like I said, it's all sort of singular models. And what we want to do is have a singular model that respects all the different silos. And we don't have a good benchmark for that. So we want to go get this grant. If we get the grant, we can bring in a bit of a think tank to work with us to create something unique in the province.
I can confirm that at least Hooay, it's like that. We just have one big bucket like a municipality. I have Director Sparrow and then Director McClellan.
Thank you. So I'm reading this as a matching grant with $25,000. So what is your projection for the total cost you're going to need to get this person in and get this thing up and running?
Shane?
Thank you. Through the chair. So outside of that $25,000, it will be staff time. So it will be a majority of our finance team working with operations staff.
Daniel, do you want to further elaborate?
Which is no different than, or probably less time than if we were trying to figure it all out on our own. I don't have the exact estimate of time, unfortunately. I'd have to sit down with Terry and flush that out. Less time than if we're doing it on our own. And this is why we stopped where we were at, is that given the range of projects that our finance team's working on, this would require a lot more of their time to figure out on their own. And so going for this grant to bring in expertise reduces the staff requirement, but doesn't eliminate it.
Okay, Director McClellan, please go ahead.
And just curious, as Director Cody was, we've had these things ongoing for a long time. What happened? Is it not on anymore? Or is this something brand new? Or is this something we should be maybe having a recorded vote on, just so people remember how they voted? I don't know. Yeah, I'm confused as to why it's necessary.
Okay, thanks. So the asset management work had been continuing up until a point where it was realized that the amount of staff time in doing it was more than what it would be if we had a dedicated contract person doing the work. So it has continued. It's not complete because we've done all of the assets, like the actual review of what we have. And so the work that this is the next phase of that, or the next step, which is, okay, we're not like a municipality. We're not like a First Nation. We can't just all think about it in one fund or one silo, as Daniel said, because it's a regional district and it's every single piece of infrastructure is managed in a separate category or separate silo. That's a lot of work to be done. And it might be, and it is, given the numbers, less expensive to have a staff member, or not a staff member, a contractor do that work, because it's basically parsing through each of the services, identifying the affected infrastructure and assets, and having a financial plan for that goes beyond 10 years for the eventual replacement or maintenance of that asset piece. So it's a lot of work. So we're in the middle of it. So we have an understanding of all the assets, but now we need a plan for how are each of these services going to pay for those things once they come up? Did I forget anything? Okay. I did read it several days ago though, so, Dr. Haggard and then Dr. Cote.
I'd like to read the motion, please, Mr. Chair.
Okay, let's go to Dr. Cote and I'll go right back to you.
Just had a question about staffing that we have. Do we still have someone doing asset management? Because I know it was in the budget that we got a person, so yes, we're still someone.
So we do have 0.5 of a full-time equivalent working on asset management. And the other 0.5 is on grants. And I was just thinking of that as you said that it's been hard to structure it so that there are periods of time where our single staff that has a dual role can focus purely on asset management and not compromise the grant opportunities. But I do want to take the opportunity to sort of like toot our horn, is that 0.5 of an FTE has generated over a third of our budget. So for every dollar a taxpayer spends, they're getting $1.33 in grants coming back. So it's just that 33 cents increase is huge across the region, and that's a half position that's helped generate that.
Dr. Haggard, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that the Alberni-Quicot Regional District Board of Directors support the grant funding application to the Union of BC Municipalities Asset Management Planning Program for up to $25,000 for the development of the long-term financial plan program for the ACRD.
Thank you. Seconded by a lot of people. I'll say Dr. Steer. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you, Shane. I think you're up next for the next one, which is the linear asset assessment and mapping. Please go ahead.
Wonderful, thank you. So through the chair, staff are proposing awarding the Parks Linear Asset Management and Mapping contract to Coastal Resource Mapping Limited. So the goal of this contract is to perform assessments on bridges, wharfs, gangways, and ramps, which will assist the ACRD in providing future budgetary requirements, strategic planning for repairs and maintenance, as well as improving the ACRD's asset inventory and spatial data mapping. A request for proposal was issued for this contract, and we did receive 2 submissions. This project is funded in part by UBCM, as well as allocated funds from the Community Works Fund. I would also like to note my apologies, and I would like to ask that in the resolution that the 6-month term be amended to 9 months to allow for timeline matching with the UBCM grant. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. I was going to ask about that, and now you preempted me. That's perfect. Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to request that there's 2 other locations be added to this. And that would be the Cougar Smith Park and Great Central Lake boat ramp, boat access, just for future budget related issues. Thank you.
Sorry, I thought they were included. Sorry, I may have misread it though. Daniel, go ahead.
If it's not, we can add it in, and if it's already there, then that's good, but noted. And yeah, it's intended to be there as part of all our other assets, so yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just recognize that as areas at Sprout Lake. Dixon Park is mentioned, but no other area. So there's trails, there's Cougar Smith Park and Great Central Lake boat launch that really stick out to me. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dr. Cote. Was there any other comments? Were there any other comments? Okay, seeing none. Does anyone, would anyone move the motion as amended? Thank you, Dr. Haggard. Seconded by Dr. Cote. Just for our benefit, I realized I should have asked Dr. Haggard to read it. I'll just read it. That the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors award the Parks Linear Asset Assessment and Mapping contract to Coast Resource Mapping Limited for a 9-month term in the amount of $50,000 excluding GST and authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute the contract on behalf of the SCRD. So that's the motion that was moved and seconded. Any further comments? Dr. McClement, please go ahead.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't cost more if we're going 3 more months. But I would like a recorded vote as a weighted vote.
Is it a weighted vote? It's a contract. It's not a budget item. Is that? It is weighted? Oh, it is, yes. Sorry, thank you. Okay, we'll do a recorded vote. Did you have a comment first, Dr. Cote?
Thank you. So on page 64, it talks about provided grants up to 50% of the total project. So I'm just wondering if this will help. We did an asset management plan for Sprout Lake, or active transportation study which isn't finalized. But I'm just wondering if this will also add to our credibility for Sprout Lake to get a trail master plan in the future. So will this benefit our application for a grant for that? Thank you.
Daniel?
That is a good question. In general, having more accurate information and details on all our assets is helpful. But I would have to see the grant we're applying for to understand what it is that they're actually weighing as being important. So as a general rule, I'll say yes. There could be some variability depending on which grant we end up applying for.
Thank you. Director Roth?
Thank you. Yeah, I noticed, or I guess Jack McClellan was mentioning that it's a weighted vote, which means that Hupachesith and Tishat First Nations people are included in that number. So have we consulted with these First Nations on this?
Go ahead.
Well, this is an assessment of our existing assets, and so I'm not sure what aspect of consultation. What do you mean by consult with them?
Well, a weighted vote, like in Beaver Creek, it includes Hupachesith First Nations people in that number. And in Sprout Lake, it includes Tishat First Nations in that weighted vote, like the 2 votes that Sprout Lake would have. So I'm just wondering, like, do we consult with Hupachesith and Tishat because their people are included in these numbers?
Well, where consultation, where we have projects and new initiatives tied to the land, we do consult. But in terms of due process for a vote, I think that's part and parcel of why we're going down the route of exploring the inclusive governance work that we're doing, is that their voices are not part of a vote under existing legislation in any meaningful way. Their population bases in terms of numbers, when we're looking at any of the census information, but they're not actively at this table. Okay.
Yeah, it's an interesting question in regards to what you define as consultation, because big C consultation that is required under law, the province is responsible for it. And therefore, I don't know that they would capture this particular item because it's information gathering at the very end of it, because we can probably share that information when it's relevant. You do raise an interesting question in regards to when we're contemplating services that affect Hupachesith or Tishat people for services. So like maybe we should take into account the opinions of Tishat and Hupachesith when we talk about Alberni Valley Transit or something like that in the future. So I don't know what that looks like exactly. I don't think we necessarily have to worry about that here. But from a small C consultation perspective, that's a conversation we can add to our, monthly meeting with Tishat. And then that's something I can talk to Brandy about informally, just because I run into her everywhere. So with that, I can probably commit us to reporting back at the last meeting of next month and see what best practices might be able to be added to protocols with both of those nations and potentially others.
With weighted votes, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. So with that, we do have a vote coming up now, and it is recorded. So I am hoping Director Minions is able to hear. And Lavana, if you could turn your, there you go. Yeah, you're way ahead. Whoa. Whoa. Okay. I remember that time. Okay. All those in favor? Okay, I'll read out the folks online first. So Director Siga voting yes? Or not voting? Oh, yes? Okay. Director McEwen, Director Steer, Director Roth, Director Beckett, Director Johnson, Director Mastrangelo, Director Minions. Inside, we have Director Coots, Director Sparrow, Director Coche, Director Haggard, and Director Jack. I guess I have to count myself. And those opposed? Director McClement opposed. Are there any others? I think that's everyone, actually. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Okay. So with that, that brings us into item 9, planning matters. But before we do so, I need to use the washroom. So I'm going to call a 5-minute break if that's okay. And we'll come back in 5 minutes. Dr. Mastrangelo, did you have anything you wanted to say, or are you just happy for a break? Okay. Okay. All right. We'll see everyone in 5 minutes. Thank you. Alrighty, we'll go forward. So Lavana, I'm wondering if I can convince my wife and convince you to give you a baby wrap, unless you have any. You know, those big pieces of cloth? Would you be interested in that?
I would definitely be interested in that.
Because he looks like he's really trying to kill himself. So, uh,
Oh,
yeah. Oh, yeah, he's pretty top heavy.
yes.
Oh my God, that's so cute. Okay. So I think we're ready to get started here. So if anybody who is supposed to be on the meeting, oh my God, so cute. Okay. But I will get a hold of you later because my wife has like 17 baby wraps and I'm pretty sure we have something that'll work really well for you. Okay, cool. So hopefully we have everyone involved. It's been a little more than 5 minutes now, but understanding that if people wanted to use the washroom and get a coffee, it probably makes more sense. Not a lot of smokers anymore. 7 minutes for smoke. Because you're the only one looking at me. Okay, so we are starting up item 9.1, electoral area directors only. And so I will just say that Indigenous and municipal folks still count for quorum, so please don't go away. But we'll start with 9.1A. That's the temporary use permit for Beaufort. So please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you very much. This is a temporary use permit application to allow the property owners at 8262 Meshers Road to rent a one-bedroom accessory dwelling unit that they have on their property as a short-term rental. The board had considered this application on August 28th, where the board directed that the neighbor notification and public advertising process take place. This process has now been completed and no public correspondence was received. Staff recommend that the board issue the TUP for a period of 3 years and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Or motions? Director McClellan?
I would move the temporary use permit, that the board of directors issue the temporary use permit TUP T4006.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cote. Any further comment? Seeing none. All those in favor, EA directors? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Item B is for Long Beach. It's a development variance. Please go ahead.
Thank you. This development variance would allow for an increase in the building height of the cabin on this property from 19 feet to 20 feet. The variance would resolve an error in measurement during construction of the partially built cabin that was identified through the building permit process. The Long Beach Advisory Planning Commission considered this application at their September 16th meeting, where they passed a recommendation to support the public input process. At this point, staff recommend that the board proceed with the public input process on the variance application. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Siga, do you want to just take this?
Yeah, I'd like to move that the Board of Directors consider issuing the development variance permit DVC 24010, subject to the neighboring properties being notified as per Local Government Act S499.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Everyone. Dr. Sparrow. Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in, Dr. Siga, comment? Or are you voting?
I just wanted to comment that because this is over height and there are height restrictions at Salmon Beach, I'm really looking forward to the community OCPs getting done. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. McClellan, did you have a comment? Your mic's on?
No, you said voting and I was doing.
Oh, your microphone's on though. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item C is for Sprout Lake. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is a temporary use application that would allow for the short-term rental of an accessory dwelling unit located within the house on this property. The applicants recently completed the building permit process for the 90 square meter self-contained suite, and they've reactivated their TUP application. The Sprout Lake APC considered the application at their September 9th meeting, where they supported the TUP as presented. At this point, staff recommend that the board proceed with the public input process at this time, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Dr. Cote?
Ready to do the motion? So move that the Board of Directors consider temporary use permit application TUP 19006 subject to the following: issuance of an occupancy permit by the building inspector for the accessory dwelling unit, neighborhood notification as per local government act 494.
Thank you. There's a seconder. Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. Item D is for another one for Spro. No, it isn't. Is it? Yes, it is. For Spro Lake, please go ahead.
Thank you. This one relates to a property at 10551 Asher Road. This is another temporary use application that would allow for the short-term rental of a basement suite located within the applicant's home. The secondary suite is now permitted in all residential only zones with no minimum lot size, in alignment with the zoning bylaw amendment that the board passed in June that complies with the provincial small scale multi-unit housing legislation. The applicants intend to utilize the secondary suite to allow short-term rental uses during the summer months, and as part of the application, a health and safety review of the suite by the building inspector will be required. Again, the Spro Lake APC considered this application at their September meeting where they supported it for a 3-year term, and staff recommend that the board proceed with the public input and neighbor notification process before making a final decision on the application.
Thank you. Director Cote?
Thank you. Prepared to make the motion that the board of directors consider temporary use permit TUP 24007, subject to the following: completion of a health and safety review by the ACRD building inspector and neighborhood notification as per local government act 494.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Item E, our last item, is for Beaver Creek. Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you. This is a rezoning application to rezone the 0.8 hectare property at 6416 Beaver Creek Road to RA3 district in order to facilitate a 2-lot subdivision. The applicants intend to construct a new single-family dwelling on the vacant lot that will be created at the rear of this property. The board first considered this application at the August 28th meeting, where the board directed that staff undertake the public input process. The public input period included neighbor notification, advertisements placed in the newspaper, and information posted on the ACRD website and on the development application sign located on the property. Through that process, one letter was received expressing general opposition to the development. That letter is included on the agenda. The letter references the impact that a previous subdivision of another property and had on the privacy of their yard, and expressed a general desire to maintain the rural character of the area. I will highlight that the respondent's property is not directly adjacent to this property and is located just up the road. At this time, staff do recommend that the board proceed with 3 readings of the bylaw, and if this rezoning proceeds, the applicants will need to seek a professional to confirm that the sewage disposal capacity can be met prior to the board considering this bylaw again for adoption. Happy to answer any questions on it.
Thank you. Dr. Roth?
Yeah, I'm ready to read the motions. I move that bylaw P1511 Regional District of Alberni-Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw be read a first time.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Siga. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried.
That bylaw P1511 Regional District of Alberni-Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw be read a second time.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Siga. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
And finally, a third time.
And seconded by Dr. McClellan. Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion carried. Alrighty, that is it for planning matters. Thank you, Alex. That brings us to reports. 10.1 are staff reports. It's a meeting schedule in the building report. Does anyone have anything they want to pull out? Okay, seeing none, could we have a motion to receive the reports? Thank you, Director McClellan, seconded by Dr. Sparrow. All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. That brings us to member reports. That brings us to item A, which is 911 Corporation. Director Beckett.
Mr. Chair, the next 911 meeting is at the end of October, so no report.
Thank you for that. Regional Library, Dr. Cote.
Thank you. We did have a meeting and not much came out of it. But at UBCM, there was a revised motion that came to the resolution floor. So, and it passed. So it was to ask for the province to take a look at funding opportunities for the library rather than just asking for money. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next up is the Air Quality Council, Dr. Sparrow. Sorry, it is the Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce. Dr. Minions.
No report.
Thank you. I checked it off first. Now the Air Quality Council, Dr. Sparrow.
Well, thank you for that. I have a report there from the website, the AQ website. They have the third highest known of all months for their traffic on August, which is good. And the Alberta District Fall Fair is part of the ACRD's Fire Smart booth, and thanks to Randy Thone for helping us out. AQC demonstrated how to build a do-it-yourself air purifier and provided other air quality information. And if you listen to the radio, they have chatter back and forth how to build your own, and kind of cute that way. Upcoming, there's a Catalyst tour tomorrow from 1 till 3, and we'll see how that all goes. That's what I have for now. Thank you.
Was that the thing with the box fans?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Okay, next up is the AVICC, Dr. Cote.
Thank you. AVICC attended UBCM. We had our luncheon on the Wednesday. It was very well attended. We had 6 nominations from AVICC for UBCM executive, and I'm sure that split the vote, which is very unfortunate. We only have 1 representative now, which is the president of AVICC on the UBCM executive. Very disappointed at that. I think that we're underrepresented now in a very large way. It was monopolized by the north of BC, and going to be watching that very closely as we go forward. So that's it. Oh, and AVICC supported a resolution with ministry for, watershed protection and around forestry and watershed protection. So we did support AVICC members at UBCM, and that stands. But we're also looking for any advocacy work, education for our communities. So if you have any suggestions, please pass them along. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next up is the Sawakin Public Advisory Group, Dr. Sparrow.
Thank you. No report at this time. We're waiting for our first meeting in the fall.
Thank you very much. All right, item G, any other reports? Okay, seeing none, could we have a motion to receive the reports, please? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow, seconded by Dr. Siga. All those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Great. I don't believe we have any unfinished business, nor any late business. Do we have any comments? Because we have no one in the gallery. Any comments on the email address? And make sure to hit refresh on the inbox.
Yeah. Nothing on email, and I'm just going to check in Zoom. And nothing in Zoom. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I believe that means a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Director McClellan, seconded by Director Coots. All of those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you so much, everyone. This was a great meeting. Okay, have a good one.
Bye.